Hello and welcome back to the How to Get an Analytics Job podcast. Our guest this week is a senior product manager at Amazon. Danny Lauer just happens to be an old buddy of mine who reached out to me about 3 weeks ago, seeing if I actually wanted to join his team. Now, I had to respectfully decline his invitation for interviewing, but I did ask if he wanted to come on the podcast. In this podcast episode, we break down how Danny finds analysts to interview, the interview process, and we also talk about how Danny and I have developed a long-term professional relationship. And I think this is a really interesting part of the conversation because I didn't know this, but apparently Danny's been following me for years on LinkedIn. So we talk about personal branding and how to put the right brand image out to bring opportunities into your life. Now, for the interactive section of this podcast, we're switching things up. The semester at Greensboro College has officially ended, and I don't know if you guys know this or not, but I've also been teaching at High Point University. I'm going to be bringing on Hunter Brown, who took my special projects class at HPU, and we're going to be reviewing the Tableau public portfolio that he developed during the semester, which is the perfect combination. I didn't realize Danny had hired an entry-level analyst who had a Tableau public portfolio. Then we're going to be wrapping up the episode with the LinkedIn submitted Q&A. And instead of Al Bellamy, our social media manager like usual, facilitating this conversation, we have Dr. Daniel Hall, who is now the Dean of the Business School at High Point University. So if you're new to the podcast, you can actually head over to LinkedIn and look up how to get an analytics job. On the webpage, you have an opportunity to weekly participate in the podcast episode by submitting questions that you would like me to ask the expert. This podcast is brought to you by Panoply. Panoply is a platform that allows you to connect to over 60 different data sources, where you can study your data in SQL, visualize it in tools like Power BI or Tableau, or even analyze your data in your favorite programming language. Click the link in the description down below and you can get a free 14-day trial to panoply.io. One more thing before we kick off the podcast episode, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell if you want future notifications about when we drop our upcoming episodes. Also, if you're getting a lot of value out of the podcast, the best thing that you can do to get back to us is leave a like, a comment in the comment section down below, or even share this on social media. With all that being said, let's jump into the podcast episode. Danny Lauer, it's been years. How have you been?
It has been. Not too bad, not too bad. How about yourself, John David?
Hanging in there. Just got some news about an hour ago that I'm going to be flying back out to Santa Barbara to record some more courses for Madecraft to go on LinkedIn.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Santa Barbara is a gorgeous area. So I know that you've been doing some world traveling too. So you were what, in Australia for a while, and now you're in Seattle at Amazon, right?
Yep. I'm back home here. Had to come back a little bit earlier than I wanted out of Australia. Loved it down there, but the nice thing is Amazon was able to provide me with an opportunity to still continue to work internationally, even though I'm planted here in Seattle, which has kind of helped me get through the COVID bit of like pretending to be international, but not. So mainly I'm looking at inventory outcomes for Australia, Singapore, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil, and then all future kind of country launches that we will be doing, mainly to kind of help bootstrap some of the young marketplaces up to kind of get them up to speed as far as parity, as far as like systems go, and kind of best practices from your established markets.
Perfect. Well, what's so weird? It's kind of like that concept of reticular activation. Like when you buy a new car and that's all you see. I think within 3 days of recording the episode with Jay Sueño about how he got his job at Amazon, you reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm hiring." Yeah. So you are what's your official title? Product manager?
Yep. I'm a senior product manager here.
Okay, and so I felt weird because I was like, I don't want to sound like overly pretentious of like, hey, I don't want to waste your time, but I'm like, doing my own thing and it feels good. But I mean, that's kind of like oh man, that felt awesome having you reach out. So why don't you tell me a little bit about like what was the opportunity, or how does it function kind of within your team, like an analytics role?
Yeah, so actually we just ended up hiring one person. So we actually had two roles open. One we just filled, and I think the other one we are currently interviewing for. Don't quote me on that. But no, I'm super happy with the individual that we're onboarding. She actually just accepted yesterday, so very excited. Um, and she's actually also a student out of University of Washington, where I'm also an alum. So was able to work through that program to kind of pull her in. But so mainly what we're kind of looking for is in
Wait,
my
can I pause you
particular.
there?
Yep.
Can you break down like what made her awesome? I think that
Yeah.
I want to hear what you have to say next, but it's like, wait, there's a juicy nugget. Why are you excited
Oh
about
yeah.
her
Oh yeah.
specifically?
No, and I was about to say I have some good notes on all of that. But yeah, no. So what made this individual really awesome is, and I think this is kind of why I reached out to you, and it was from watching the Jay Sueno podcast, because I've watched a couple of them now, and
Oh,
it's why
nice.
I felt slightly compelled to come on. I'm like, you called me out on it and being like, oh, I'd really like him on. I'm like, yeah, he brought it up. I now have to show up. But yeah, so the one thing, there was a couple things with her. She started kind of networking a little bit before she really needed anything. And I think that's one of the common mistakes a lot of people have, especially when it comes to LinkedIn, networking, and all of that, is a lot of times people are like, hey, you have this thing that I like. How do I get the thing that I like? Rather than, hey, tell me about what you do. Tell me about like what's happening. Just starting that like casual conversation. I think that almost links very much into like how you and I met, is when like, yeah, you reach out to me through Alex and was like, hey, I want to go get my MBA. You're currently getting your MBA. What are the pros? What are the cons? What are all of that? And then we were able to kind of build that friendship up. And then why you kind of came top of mind when this role came up was, okay, I need somebody in the analytics space, somebody who I know is going to be driven and smart, and that can, learn quickly on the fly and is going to be hungry. And like I said, you're one of the first people that popped up. I've known you for years, trust you a lot, would really love to have worked with you. And hopefully we'll find a way to work together sometime in the future here. But like even one of the things that you commented was, okay, I might not know SQL the best, or I might not. And it wasn't so much, okay, what hard skills do you have? It's what skills can we teach you? Are you teachable? Are you hungry? Are you
Mhm.
willing to take that step to kind of get there? And with the individual that we did end up hiring, she checked all of those boxes, where she was very hungry for opportunity. She, she had a lot of the hard skills already, but also showed an aptitude to be able to learn quickly on the fly, and just be overly open. But then again, upon like even our initial contacts, wasn't really asking for anything other than just information. Because I will tell you, like on the other side, there are horror stories when I do that. And I actually had a individual who reached out to on there, and we spoke a little bit. I'm like, yeah, let me check. And a lot of the professionals you might be reaching out to are very busy. So my advice is give it a little bit of time. Where this individual reached out to me twice on LinkedIn, friended me and messaged me on Facebook, found my work account email and was emailing me at work. Like, and I'm like, yeah, a lot of times we're trying to hire people we really want to work with and we really feel comfortable with working with. And so that needs to be your focus if you're networking and you're trying to work, is also to present yourself as somebody that you would want to work with. And that's even how I dress and how I act, is I'm like, I put out there the same thing that I would like my other coworkers to be. We're down to business, we're serious, we know our subject matter, but we still have fun, we still have personalities, we're still extremely unique individuals. And it's the thing that I love about the team that I'm currently on, is everybody is insanely unique in their own ways, extremely interesting. And even though I'm based here in Seattle, I am the only American born individual on our team. I'm like, I had to correct myself because one of my coworkers actually just got his US citizenship a couple weeks ago, so technically American.
Nice. So wait, okay. What you're making me think of is that, okay, last episode we had Alex Moy, who is he's the VP of, what was it, the Business Intelligence Center of Excellence at Truist out in Winston now. And one thing that he said is he breaks down his interviews into 3 steps, one of them being the behavioral. So essentially what we did by building a relationship and a friendship, you already know I like him. I would not mind spending 8 hours a day with him, day in and day out, because he's fun. We connect. We know, like, he's not tedious to be around, so to speak.
Yeah, it's and it's one of the things that I learned during business school when I was learning like case study interview styles and all of that, is the good old airport test. Can I be stuck in an airport with you for several hours and still want to talk to you when we get home? And that is weirdly, it's a big piece. Like we want you to be skilled, we want you to be knowledgeable, but we also understand that we're going to be spending a lot of time together. And so it's also having somebody that, you would like to be around, and, that you're excited to come into work and to interact with every day.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that makes total sense, because I think a lot of people are fixated on what can I do? What can I do? And it's almost like a snapshot. So right now I'm showing up to the interview. I know SQL, I know Tableau. This is who I am. To where I think that it's much more of a flow of the interviewer, because what you were saying, like, it's weird that I guess I'll be a little vulnerable here. Yeah, I don't know SQL. I will have data scientists on my team go and do all the coding. I'm more kind of like a business consultant with a little bit of data analysis skills sprinkled in. So yeah, I guess it's not so much about what you know right now, but like, do you show potential? And I guess I've communicated that to you somehow. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe having a podcast.
No, I was about to say it's a gut feel. It's like, and again, we've interacted both on a semi-professional and also a personal level. Like, we've talked a lot, like, through when you were getting your MBA and some of the projects that you were doing, and you don't think that I've been like low-key stalking you on LinkedIn a little bit just to kind of check what you've been up to. Yeah, it's kind of that. And one of the things that I kind of made a note about here, because as we were talking about this is that coming up through being an MBA student, and even going back into like undergrad, there were so many mistakes that I made when it came to networking, interviewing, all of that. And one of them kind of, touched on where it's, networking should be almost treated like getting into shape. If you're asking me now how you get in shape for summer, I will say you should have started last year. And a lot of your networking, if you're like, okay, I need this job next month or in the next 2 months, how should I start networking? When should I? Last year. Last year is when you should have started, because the best way to get my time, any other professional's time, is when you're not asking for anything other than to just know a bit about us. Because naturally, people, especially professionals, love to talk about what they're doing, what they're up to, and how they got there. And the other big mistake that I made is that I didn't lean on being a student enough. Because there's nothing more that professionals really like is extending that hand down and helping students, find their path, find their way, because all of us have been there. We all know kind of the struggle and what it, what it kind of comes to, but it also, at the end of the day, it's kind of selfish. It makes us feel good. Like I was over the moon when I was able to help out an individual from, University of Washington land their first postgraduate job here at Amazon. Like, that's an awesome feeling for us here. So it's, it would be the one big thing, especially for your students, that I would say is lean hard on being a student. Because again, you're not really asking for anything other than just knowledge, and we love to share it. And then the best part is, a year, couple months later, we start thinking about a role. We're like, hey, I met this one guy. bit ago. I wonder what he's up to. Or even if it's later on in our professional lives, like you and I, where it's like, hey, I know John David. He's very capable. He's smart. I would love to work with him. I'm going to reach out to him and see if he, if he wants to interview for this job. And I'm like, I can help him get prepared for it and all of that. Because dirty secret about me, I didn't know SQL before I started Amazon either.
Wow, you're making me feel better.
It's hilarious. I still got the big, thick SQL for Dummies. That right when I got the interview, it said, "Hey, you got to know SQL." I'm like, "Well, I've got a couple weeks. I'm going to teach myself SQL." So between that, Code Academy, and a couple other resources online, I was actually able to teach myself to be a capable SQL coder before I even walked into Amazon. And then once you get into Amazon here, there are tons and tons and tons of resources and all that kind of help you along. So now I was about to say, I'm probably one of the better people outside of our analysts, which I'm super happy we now have because I can now stop it, but I'm probably one of the better individuals in Excel and in SQL. And yeah, I walked into Amazon, not really, I knew a ton about Excel, but not a ton about SQL. So
yeah,
it's stuff that you can learn.
well, okay. Let me unpack kind of the anxious feeling I have around SQL. I just don't find coding interesting. And I worry about learning that skill and going kind of in that direction, and kind of being in a job role where I'm not, like, I'm really passionate about business strategy, developing revenue streams, partnerships, and like growing a business in general. And but that's kind of like, I think I found my sweet spot of being a consultant. But it's interesting you said that. So you were really deep into SQL and then you kind of moved out of it. So maybe there's kind of some questioning to be done there of, it's okay short term to learn some kind of head in a direction that may not be 100% great fit because of the kind of job that's next or after, a few jobs from then.
Yeah, and it's always good to know, like, just continue to be learning. Like right now, I am just starting the pathway of learning Python. I don't really know Python. Most of us don't use Python in day-to-day learning, but especially here at Amazon, I think even globally, machine learning is becoming a bigger and bigger part of data analytics, data mining, and all of that. And so kind of just, be on the front foot on this, especially if this becomes a requirement later on in my life, whether it's continuing to work here at Amazon, spinning off and doing my own thing, working for a different company, etc. Is that I think you even said it in one of your earlier podcasts, is luck will get you to the door, but to walk through it takes a skill. And so really what I'm trying to do is make sure that I'm loaded up on all the skills that I need, that if one day, one of these doors do open, I'm not having to do the same thing I did with SQL and scrambling to learn it within a couple of weeks, that I already have that knowledge. I could go, okay, this is the direction that I want to go. So it's also that like always being a learner, never stopping, never being content with what you already know. It's continuing to, be a forever student. And to be honest, if I had the resources, that's what I would be. I would be a forever student.
Yeah. No, I love that. Well, so Naval Ravikant talks about how if you're passionate about something, that's a competitive advantage into itself, because if you are passionate about coding, you might learn 5 coding languages, and then that gives you insights and nuances into how all the frameworks work, to where, like, the idea of learning 5 coding languages, to me, it just sounds like a nightmare. Like, I want to go out and I want to be interacting with people. I want to be building, structures or like businesses and revenue streams. So the whole scrambling to learn SQL, I actually did have a thought on this. So Tina Huang, who's been on the podcast, she taught herself SQL, I think, in like 11 days before her interview at one of these big FANG companies. So it's possible, but that does sound a little stressful though.
It is, but again, like I said, it pays off. And like I said, if you ever do change your mind, but yeah, but I think it's also just, go to health habit to, like, I try to teach myself something new each year, whether it's professional or not. Like, I've taught myself how to paint. I've taught myself, how to play bass guitar, which very poorly, but still, But again, yeah, continuing always to learn. And I think that's going to be, that pays dividends not only in your personal life but in your professional life. Is just, yeah, always being on that trek of learning.
Well, yeah, I think it's really hazardous to get comfortable because
Mhm.
then, especially with in this analytics data science space, you have to continually, it's kind of like the Red Queen. You got to run as fast as you can just to stay put, or else you become kind of a dinosaur.
Yeah,
Something I'm learning right now is actually I'm studying the YouTube ecosystem. I'm reading this book called the YouTube Formula, and this guy who's a consultant and has helped people build like millions of following. Like it's interesting seeing how he breaks down influence on that platform because it very much pertains to soft skills as well, like being able to
yeah,
influence people, people who are on the same kind of tier of the hierarchy as you or your manager on getting buy-in on your projects. It's pretty fascinating.
yeah.
But one thing I did want to kind of circle back around to is that I do think, to add on to what you have already said about networking, I think that I would I would do the improv thing and say yes, networking and personal branding. So the one thing that has kind of solidified our relationship, which I didn't know, for those of you guys who are listening, I didn't know Danny's been stalking me, but I've given him so much ammunition to stalk me with because the podcast is me doing work out in front, and then I have a portfolio, have all these projects that I'm doing and I'm posting on LinkedIn. I think it's building kind of your expertise or being seen as an expert. It requires you not only doing the work, but doing the work in a public way. Would you agree to that?
I was about to say I would agree to that. I think that will I think it will do that thing of get you that conversation going or get that like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what this individual is up to. So yeah, I 100% agree with you on that, which I'm sure is a little bit counterintuitive. If you look at my LinkedIn, it's a touch bare bones. It kind of gives the basic highlights, but the interesting part is I've got an interesting enough background that it generally people go through there, and I have been contacted by recruiters of being like, okay, you've got the aerospace, you've got Amazon, you've got CSCP, you've got the MBA, but then wait, there's mortuary work, there's cheerleading, like what in the, and generally that is, it's that weird, again, it's almost that weird brand, like you want that like earworm in there that will be like, okay, how do I remember you? And that's exactly one. And oh my gosh, good old improv, yes. And actually took improv and performed improv while I lived in Australia because it was one of the things I wanted to teach myself. So
Yeah, well, the whole cheerleading thing, for those of you who are just listening to this as a podcast episode, Danny is big. He is a muscular dude. I remember working out at the Gold's Gym in downtown Winston-Salem, and I was maxing out, and you were like, "Are you just warming up?" Because I mean, you had, I don't know if you've like cooled off on that, but you were, I mean, you made me want to just leave the gym. It was, made me feel
I
really
hope
pathetic.
not. I hope not. No, I was about to say it has not cooled off at all. Actually, if anything, over COVID, it's ramped up even more. So
Oh, good for you. Oh
yeah,
man.
I was about to say physical, like maintaining physical health to me is almost a direct line to my mental health.
Hmm.
And that I think that's the one thing people don't take serious enough sometimes, especially when they come to work at big companies and all of that, is you've got to take care of all the health as well as maintaining a good work life harmony and all of that, just so you can kind of be the best version of yourself through all of it. And I do know that, like, I go to the gym every day for lunch, so like after we wrap up this podcast, I will be heading over to my local gym to get a quick lift in to kind of re-decompress and be ready for the second half of my day.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm not surprised. Well, I can't. You're wearing that shirt. I cannot see the bulging
Yeah,
muscles underneath it. It's quite the colorful shirt. What
thank you.
is that? What are those
So
shapes?
this, I have no idea. I found it when I was living in Australia, and I think it's Japanese because it's
Ah,
also a 4XL, and I'm a big boy, but I'm not a 4XL.
that's so ridiculous.
But yeah, it's again, it's a part of that one thing that almost as you were saying, my personal brand.
Hmm.
Anybody that has ever met me or worked with me knows that I tend to dress in very bright, colorful clothes. Wednesdays, I always actually, it was really funny. I started this weird tradition on accident, where I either wear a bow tie or a tie and a vest every day to Amazon to work. And Amazon is notoriously a very relaxed, casual dress code kind of place. So a lot of people in like either simple button downs or t-shirts and shorts. And here I come in, waistcoat on, bow tie, bright colors.
All right, the bow tie makes me really think of Wake Forest because that's like what they wear there, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's
That like southern chic, that southern aesthetic.
I took the thing that I actually didn't. Ooh, if anybody from the South is listening to this, I'm gonna get in trouble. I actually didn't like it when I first got there. Being a West Coast guy, I was all about that t-shirt, jeans, all that. And slowly I learned how to tie a bow tie. And then I came back home to the West Coast and everybody's casual. So again, I just fit right in with the herd again. I'm like, yeah, I don't like fitting in with the herd. It's not what I've ever done in my entire life. Screw it. I'm touching back on some of the, Southeast charm. I'm throwing some bow ties in here.
Okay, I did hear that Winston-Salem was voted like one of the best dressed cities in all of the United States. So total side tangent. Because well, it's interesting seeing because Greensboro, like if you go to like the bar scene in Greensboro, it's got a grunge vibe to it. To where you go to like uh the downtown, like what is it, Sixth and Cherry, and yeah,
Yeah.
people are dressed up in like suits and stuff. It's just a completely different aesthetic. But I won't go too far down
Yeah.
that rabbit hole. Let's circle it back to
Yeah.
Amazon and the interviewing process. So
Yeah.
do you guys have a similar approach to Alex Moy where you have basically 3 rounds?
So yeah, your basic Amazon interview is going to be, and again, this can change from role to role, but just the basic way it goes is you'll do 2 phone interviews, mainly looking. They're almost always behavioral. Um, if you're coming in as an analyst, one of them might be a problem-solving activity in which we will give you a like 2 tables and for just kind of to test your coding experience on the fly. Generally, it's nothing overly difficult. Generally, it goes around like joins and being able to order and rank and some pretty much can you do the basic functionality of SQL. So those will be kind of your first 2. And then also there will always be behavioral. So your stars, always be super brush up on your stars. And especially at Amazon, learn and know the Amazon leadership principles. They are a part of literally everything that we do. It's the one thing that surprised me a ton when I got here. And it's the one thing that tends to surprise people is when you come up through the interviews, you will be graded on different leadership principles. So if I walk into an interview, I know that I am going to be grading this person on 2 leadership principles, either like earns trust, invent and simplify, customer obsession, all of that, and how their behavioral interview, aka stars, fit within those leadership principles. So that will be a big part of it. And then your last round will be what we call the loop, which will be anywhere from either 4 to 6 45 to 50-minute interviews that will be almost all behavioral except for one. And one will be, again, another SQL and then data visualization. So a lot around Tableau. It's one of the ones that I actually just did last week was judging somebody's Tableau presentations.
Yeah.
Portfolio.
Wow. Well, I mean, I was going to segue into the student expert interactive segment off of kind of getting you to elaborate on STAR because that is the first co-host I had for the podcast. She actually did professional development for Wake Forest master's programs, and I'm familiar kind of with the STAR method. It's like situation, what's STAR?
So situation, task, action, result.
Okay.
And actually Wake Forest, and I will tip my hat to those guys, actually taught me a nice little nugget in there that has actually helped me a ton, is just adding another R to the end of it. So star, but repeatable. How can
Repeatable.
you then take that story, that learning, and repeat that in your next role? And
I like that.
yeah, it's a good thing. And then another thing that I was taught, and it's actually served me quite well, is and it's real fun to watch sometimes in interviews, but if we ever if you ever are presented with a question of like, tell me about a time something didn't go your way, or tell me about a time you failed, or something to that measure. So many people love to go, oh, and this is how it about crashed, and then this is how I pulled it up and went. And normally that is never what we're asking for. What we're asking for is, tell me how this went and crashed and burned, and then tell me how you then picked it all up together again and ran. Like a very quick 30-second highlight of mine that I tend to use is, I was put in charge of this thing called Chase Cancel when I worked on toys. It's this pretty much big data algorithm that's like, how much of this should we keep? How much should we buy into? And then how much should we get rid of? Since toys is a lot of import, and you have to pretty much put in all your import orders in May for what everybody's going to want for Christmas, which is a horrifying endeavor sometimes. But this then continues to measure it all the way through the rest of the season until the end of like, okay, what do we need to be doing to end the year as clean as possible? My first year, I will frankly put my hand up, I did a terrible job. One, I had just started in May, so I didn't really know what I was doing, but that didn't fully excuse it, that I had no basis to measure on how well this was going. The historical bits weren't good, and I will just list out all the things that I did not do well. And at the end of so going into the next year, I was actually presented with multiple choices of, what projects did you want to do? And I pointed at that exact one again, being like, I'm doing that again. We're not going to accept this. And so I explained exactly how this crashed and burned, all the things that I learned. But then the redemption story behind it was, I picked it up again that next year and saved the company $16.1 million.
Nice. Oh, that's
And
awesome.
and where I fixed all the issues. And so that's kind of where, with a lot of those you want to go, is where sometimes, you don't get to be the hero in your own story. Sometimes, you are the villain or the anti-hero who kind of comes back and redeems himself at the end.
You know what? Did you ever work with Sharon Vogler at Wake Forest? Okay, so she came on, I think she was like the third episode of season 2, and she talked to my students about recruiting for Wake Forest. I think it was a Master's of Analytics, which I'm not sure that they had that when you were there, and now in the MBA program. But yeah, okay. So Hunter Brown, are you ready to have an analytics hiring manager from Amazon completely?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I cannot wait to be torn apart. Please do your best. And also, before we start, can I say that I also am mesmerized by your shirt? It's just incredible. I don't know how you found a shirt like that, but I need to get one. And
wow.
Yeah. So
wait, we're not getting on behavioral. You can't, don't suck up to him right now. This is about your work.
No. The world could always use more colorful attire. I can 100% attest.
I agree. 100%.
Yeah, note to listeners, you got to warm them up before you show the work. But no, that's cool, Dan. I didn't realize that you had just recently critiqued someone's Tableau work. And I also kind of helped facilitate this. This is something, okay, so what Hunter's going to show is a case study that we went through. And I mean, I gave them, like, one thing that I've done over the years is just created kind of like a Frankenstein of a bunch of different data sources. I gave them that and kind of ran them through a framework that I've developed. So you're not only going to be critiquing him, but you're also going to be critiquing the professor. So I'm all ears. I want to hear if if I'm doing something and it doesn't quite make sense. And I mean, you're the perfect person to give feedback. So Hunter, go ahead and share your screen. You got it pulled up, right?
Sure. Let me get that over there. Here we go. Can you see that okay? See that okay?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So I want to go ahead and get started and do a little bit of explaining of the background of this before we get into it. So in class, we were offered a data set that had to do with uh, Google data analytics and search results and different lengths of time that people would stay on the website. And so we wanted to figure out a way to we wanted to identify the metrics and dimensions that worked for Google Analytics visualization and which ones that didn't. And so this is kind of the result of that. And so to start off, we have just 2 KPI indicators at the top, indicating total sessions over time and revenue. And this is yearly, by the way. This is over the course of a year. Then also, this was a personal choice of mine. It was recommended to use a bar graph, but I chose a pie chart just because it was pretty. There's not that many different channel groupings, and so it was just easier for me to include it in a pie chart like that. There was also geodata offered, and so I figured revenue per state over the course of the year, instead of an average revenue, I felt like would be more appropriate. And then finally, what's going on there? Okay, there we go. We're good. And then finally, I just had a dual axis chart showing average revenue and sessions correlated so that we could see like if there was any kind of indication of an increase in one state or something that would cause a increase in revenue or something like that. And so that is in essence the outline of it. Did you have any specific questions about that you wanted to cover?
So I guess my first question is, so if I start clicking on some of these states, will everything?
Yes. So
I was about to say is a pie chart, and it looks like the pie chart is shifting. Am I incorrect or correct?
And the dual axis is also shifting, so you can see the correlation there. And like Texas, for example, versus sorry, it takes a little bit of time to load here. Oh, you can take my word for it. If we click on California, the dual axis chart will update as well. Let me see if I can fix this loading issue. If you have any other questions, feel free to just shoot them over real quick.
Yep. And then why did we choose? Why did you choose total sessions and revenue as your primary KPIs at the top?
So I figured that revenue is generally considered the KPI. I think especially for Google Analytics, it shows the results of your advertising and how well you're doing in a specific category. And sessions is just kind of tied into that. It shows like for example, if you're running an ad campaign in North Carolina, which is doing really well, according to the revenue indicator at the top, you can see that for every session, you're earning about $3, about $3. So that can be used to you can see what you're doing right in North Carolina. If you want to transfer that over to another state, for example, and do a little bit more like multimedia marketing campaigns or something like that, you can discuss that with whoever the client is, and go about it like that.
And I was about to say, is there a reason that we have these two independent and that we don't have some sort of an easy to read ratio, so that upon looking at this, currently I'm having, because right now I have this open on my own screen,
right,
is like I've now clicked on California, which is 11,000 sessions with 15,000 revenue. And if I want to then just really pop over to like, let's say my initial home state of North Dakota, and it's 119 to 147, just being able to click through here quickly, I'm now having to almost slow down to do the math in each of the ones. And then also, I don't know between, is there a way to know between each of the different revenue, like through each of the different channels? how much sessions are happening in there, so we can kind of really ascertain where we need to actually be looking, rather than just because there's a lot of revenue there, it also might have cost us a lot of money. So making sure that we have, what's going to be the best ROIs, what's going to be, where should, what, I would like to see in something like this is it looks nice. I will 100% give you, it looks nice, but what is the true information that you're trying to get from this? And especially from somebody who is not a data analyst, really what a lot of Tableau and a lot of, visual management, which this really is, a leader or somebody to be able to look at this and ascertain decision-making very quickly and on the fly. Where the one critique that I would give this right now, it takes a little bit of digging into and a little bit of, personal mathematics to be able to really, figure out, okay, if I'm in California, should we be, focusing more on, direct, organic, paid search, because that's going to be the one where, it's all going to be referral, social, being able to really tell, whoever your audience, your customer is, where they really need to be focusing. So I guess really at the end of the day here, my big question for you is, what is the main point you are trying to communicate with this visualization?
Right. I'd be happy to answer that. So
Perfect.
I will agree with you that there's a lot of information, for example, in
Yep.
the geo data that
Yep.
may be unnecessary. And so that can always be reconsidered with the client. So whoever, if we decide that, hey, maybe the states with $114 in it, like North Dakota, for example, maybe that's not exactly the most indicative of needing marketing. And so maybe we can just exclude that data set. Whereas, whereas if you have, like, let's say New York, where it's kind of in the middle, I think that when you more closely examine something like that, that's where you can dig in a little bit deeper with the channel grouping, and you can say, okay, so the direct search is costing us a lot of money in terms of actually hiring the marketing from Google Analytics, rather. Sorry. And so maybe it'd be more beneficial in a state that has a little bit less revenue to continue focusing on that, so the social media side of things, or pursuing a different type of marketing strategy that maybe isn't so cost heavy. And so that's kind of what I wanted to portray with this. I didn't necessarily want to say, okay, we need to increase marketing in every state because every state except 3 is doing poorly. It's more about taking advantage of what we're doing right now, and then seeing what we can do right elsewhere. That's kind of what I think I was going for with this.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what the key to a lot of the visualization is kind of finding out what is the one key thing that you're trying to get out of it. But I think then you actually hit the nail on the head on the bit where it's like, okay, here's where you can get all the detail. Because good visual management to me, even from like when I was building it, and I built it in Excel, not Tableau, so I'm very impressed with the Tableau layout, is I would always have, okay, here are the big things you need to know. But then, if you want to dig in deeper, you want to like burrow in to see where that data is, here it is. And you've done very well in that particular sense.
Thank you.
Like I said, the only true critique I truly have of this is that as somebody who'd be ingesting this, is I'm just missing that, like, what is that, like, true, like, punchline? Is it the, are we looking at ROIs? Are we looking at just, hey, what is our total session to revenue, kind of conversion? All of that, that's just the one piece that's kind of lacking, that like good headline. And that's why I initially asked why you decided to go with the KPIs of total sessions versus revenue, to kind of start ascertaining that information, and kind of that, it should almost be of, when you have something big and bold up there, is why should the customer care? And you did a pretty good job at explaining that. I think the only thing that would be in there is kind of really making that like why somebody ingesting this should care, and what the differences are, rather than them having to kind of dig through the data a little bit themselves. Because
So, sorry
go
about
ahead.
that. So
Yeah.
I just had a question, just because you were touching on ways to visualize ROI, because I agree with you 100%. ROI is extremely important when it comes to marketing campaigns, especially with Google Analytics. And so, do you have any suggestions about what would be a good way to visualize that?
I was about to say, I don't even think you would really need to visualize your ROI. You could easily go, like, if you knew how much money was being invested in each one of these sectors, whether it's, direct marketing, organic search, paid, all of that, you can then almost make that a pretty much, if you have it via sessions. I don't know exactly how that is currently, or if you even have that information in this data set.
There's a possibility that it doesn't exist in the data set, but
Yeah.
I can take a look at it later.
Yeah. Or even, okay, or even something as light as, okay, per session I have, this is how much revenue I can get. So you can also then start really focusing on the places where it's like, okay, we can buff up the sessions here. We can then hopefully, increase the revenue. Because yeah, you look at places like North Dakota. I like kind of having fun with North Dakota because nobody's from there for the most part, except for me and my family. Sorry if anybody's listening from North Dakota right now.
That's one of our key demos, actually, Danny. We're gonna lose a bunch of subscribers.
Oh yeah, do I need to go into this accent then?
Yeah, a large part of our revenue stream is actually North Dakotians, believe it or not.
But I think even just having some sort of like ratio at the top. So even as simple as total sessions, total revenue, and revenue v sessions. That way I can kind of click through really quickly and see, okay, here where the top places are, here where the bottom places are, where are we checking? Okay, this is where we kind of want to invest. And then the easier part is going, holy cow, like if we go to, some place that has like Texas, where, sorry, I'm clicking all around. I'm having
No, you're
fun
good.
here.
You're good.
Where you're almost at a 2 times, like for each revenue, you're getting $2 versus like North Dakota, it's 1v1. It's like, okay, we have more potential in Texas that we're, for a little bit of investment, we're getting more revenue. Again, it's just kind of that little bit more of a call to action of like, why should we care about any of this particular data? And you have all the data there. I think that's just the one other bit.
Wait, can I jump in here?
Yep.
Okay, so Hunter, good job.
Yep.
Although I will say this, I think you've missed the context of this. I think that which means you weren't listening in class. No,
I was 100% listening in class.
So wait, here, let Danny, how about, okay, so we got Hunter, and Hunter, I'm just messing with you. You did a fantastic
Yeah, I know.
job.
No, I know.
But let me kind of frame it up how I envisioned this. I mean, to be fully transparent, this is based off of pretty much the prototype dashboards I build for most of my clients.
Yeah.
So, okay, I guess this is me responding to, so tell us about this dashboard.
Yeah.
I would say, okay, well, essentially what we did is we built a data app that allows the marketing managers for our client to be able to identify pockets of demand. So Hunter, click on the pie chart for social.
Sure. Yeah. That's very minuscule there, but.
Oh no. Okay, well, okay, my initial thought was, all right, so here's for the social media manager. If we drill down on this, so let's say it worked, I mean, I'm not the one who built this, but let's say that worked, or it was, I would have probably tested this out ahead of time. But so for the social media manager, we can see which states and what time periods our specific product offerings are resonating out in the marketplace. So number one, that tells me regional state preferences. So for example, if we're selling hardware and we have a rustic vibe, it's probably going to sell in the Midwest way more so than in New York City. because these are preferences. So this gives some hard data to help inform the marketing manager's campaigns. All right, here's one that will work. So Hunter, drill down on North Carolina.
Sure.
So let's say that each state has their own marketing manager. So if we drill down on North Carolina, we can tell two things from this visualization. We can tell what channels are working and generating revenue, and when we should be marketing to our target demographic. So we can see that there are two spikes. We have one in January and one in March. So those are our two prime seasons. So we need to make sure that we're running ad campaigns leading up to that. What are your thoughts on that kind of pitch or that?
No, I was about to say, I think that starts narrowing it down a little bit better. And I like that idea a lot. Like, I think that at least resonates with me a little bit more. And I think it encapsulates a little bit more why the total sessions, why the revenue kind of cut like that.
Right.
So I think that might be the thing that we can kind of learn here, Hunter, is I think a little bit of just making sure that we have the marketing down and even some test examples loaded. What that's going to help do, and believe me, I still interview, I still kind of mess up, is what sometimes will happen is if you don't put that correct frame on something, the interviewer will just start asking random questions and get you off on a tangent. And rather than really focusing on the hard things that you kind of wanted to ascertain out of this, you end up in really weird conversations, kind of like what we were getting off into.
I will say, Professor Arianson's assessment was quite a bit more focused than mine ended up being.
Yeah.
So,
right. I will say this though. I didn't think about doing a calculated. And by the way, Hunter, tomorrow we're going to be critiquing these portfolios. Tomorrow, I want you to have the ratio of revenue per session up as a KPI. I think that's, of course, that's a really interesting, and you may even want to do that. You could potentially do that on like the database level, and then be able to show it by state. Because I think that, you know what? I mean, I'm going down all these rabbit holes. What you could do is have it, instead of a heat map, you could have a bubble map with color codes based on how, which states. So the size of the bubble could be how much is selling in that state, and the color could be the ratio of revenue per session.
I think that could almost replace the existing geodata map that we have, don't you think?
Well, okay. So the only pushback or criticism of that is that if you had one session in North Dakota and that led to $4, that might be an anomaly, because all the other ones might be, 30 cents per session or something on average.
Right.
So that's why I think you should have, like what we talked about in class, having the bubbles show the different sizes of the markets, and then the color code. It draws your eye to, these are the rich pockets. But in North Dakota, if it is like a really dark blue, which, by the way, why did you color code the channel groupings?
If I'm going to be completely honest with you, it looks very nice to me. And I'm going to be 100% completely open. I think it looks cool.
Okay. You know what? You were right, but you were also so wrong.
That's fine.
Having that color gradient implies that there's like a linear correlation, like a rank order between direct, then it goes to social, organic search, paid search, referral, and social.
Right.
So it implies that they're like, this is how you would line them up logically. But also too, the bar chart is the way to go. Danny, I don't know if you've had these arguments about pie charts, like never do pie charts.
Yeah, I was about to say pie charts. It's one of the things that Dr. Pinder, when I was at Wake Forest, he was very anti-pie chart. So I'm like, I think I've just been beaten out of it. I'm like, I think I can feel for Hunter, because when I was in that seat, and even when I was going through grad school, I still wanted to do pie charts, but I think I've kind of found my way out of it, because they look really nice, but they can be misleading, as John David was just kind of mentioning there.
Well, that's why we have these discussions, so that we don't have pie charts come up in the future. There you go.
Exactly.
Oh, so you planted this here just so it's
This
a
was
teachable
a
moment.
seed. This was a seed of discussion for the podcast. You're welcome, everybody.
Awesome. Well, so Danny, you got any other thoughts on this? Because Hunter, I gave you a little bit of hassle, but I think
No,
this aesthetically looks fantastic and it's very functional.
thank you. I appreciate that.
I was about to say 100%. I will echo the same thing. I think it looks great. It's just kind of missing that, initial kind of call to, like, why do I care?
Right.
Like on a basis that I don't have to do math. Like I could do math and sit here and like, okay, do all the division.
Right.
Most of us, we're going to be lazy. We want to click through this in 30 seconds and be able to kind of know what we want to know. And if we want to drill in deeper, that is there. And you've nailed that. It's just kind of getting that, like, how can I quickly glance through this just a little bit better? But other than that, I think you're 100% on the right track. And then, yeah, echo John David, pie chart, gotta go.
Will do. Will do. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hey, not a problem. Thanks, Hunter. You're a good sport.
Awesome. All right. So before we wrap up and head over to Dr. Hall and wrapping up with the Q&A section, I literally just got a text from Molly that she got a phone interview with Volvo. So that's a huge development.
Nice.
So Danny, Molly is a childhood friend of mine who is now trying to transition into the analytics space. So if Molly, you're listening to the live premiere on Friday, congratulations. All right, yeah. Dr. Hall, I know you've got 5 questions related to supply chain and working at Amazon.
Yep. All right, so I'm stepping in for your social media manager, Al Bellamy, and I'm a little intimidated because I don't have the blazing guns in the background, and I'm excited though. So we have 5 questions. The first one is from Sushrita Gotti. And she would like to ask, what does a typical supply chain workday at Amazon look like?
The answer to that is it doesn't exist. There is no such thing as a typical supply chain day here. It will all depend on what time of the year it is. It will depend on what organization you're with. So I can explain from kind of my point of view, where I'm working more on an international basis, is that at least for me, looking at inventory, I come in, I check inventory levels each week, each day. A lot of it is making sure that I'm corresponding with our fulfillment centers, with our partners on the ground. And then a lot of it is unfortunately firefighting, figuring out what are the big issues, where are the areas of opportunity for that day, that week, but then also carving out time. And most of us try to carve out 30 to 40% of our weeks to then working on longer term initiatives, because especially here at Amazon, we're not just focused about short-term gains and benefits. We're always looking towards the long term. How are we going to make this better? And one of the common phrases you'll hear around here is hands off the wheel. How do we make this as automated as possible? That way we are not wasting man hours doing manual tasks, but instead freeing up man hours to be able to work on, strategic initiatives. Like one of the things that I will be moving on to do here in the future is starting to evaluate how we launch new marketplaces more efficiently without having as much excess inventory as some of our previous launches, where that has been kind of a weak spot. So kind of to almost sum up there, it'll be a mixture of your day-to-day, your tactical, and then your strategic projects that you're working on. But depending on if you're in operations supply chain, or if you're in strategic supply chain, or even like in stock management for a different product silo, it's all going to kind of be a little bit different. I do apologize that that's not as specific as an answer as I'm sure somebody wanted, but I was about to say it's the best one there actually is.
It's a very honest answer, and we appreciate that, Danny. So definitely going to give you 1 point for that answer there. Our next question is from Alok Choka, and he wants your advice about preparing to get a supply chain analytics job at Amazon. More specifically, he wanted to know how your advice would differ for a beginner, intermediate, or advanced level programmer. You know, because I know y'all talked earlier in conversation about learning SQL to get ready for the job. So I'm assuming it's going to be a variety of different answers based on skill level.
Yeah, so I think the first and foremost is, know or at least have a really good idea, and it will all depend on the level of job that you are looking at getting into. I was about to say, be able to demonstrate any of the skills that you say that you have or that are, on the prerequisite. So if it says, all right, please know SQL, Excel, Tableau, or visualization, programming languages, make sure not only do you know that front and back and able to repeat it, because there will be a lot of times, especially if you're an analyst or going into any programming, you will be doing live programming in front of people to be able to problem solve. So making sure that you're up to date on that. If there is visualization, which most analysts will, having a ready portfolio, I will say that is the one thing that really did well for the young lady that we have now hired, is that we are talking about charting and visualization without us even prompting it. She goes, actually, I have a public Tableau portfolio. Here, let me walk you through some of my examples. So it was easy to share, it was visual, it was lined up, and it was ready to go. But most importantly is going to be ready with your behavioral stars. So my advice, regardless of your level, and I have now had 3 roles here at Amazon, and you have to re-loop for every single role. What I will do is I will sit down for, it generally takes me about 4 to 6 hours, and I will print out every single one of the leadership principles, and I will write out a specific star that highlights where I have, showcased that particular leadership example within that behavioral question. And that way, pretty much I now have at the ready 14 unique behavioral interview answers that will literally answer just about any question anybody can throw at me. It takes some time ahead of time, but believe me, it makes going through the interview process so much easier and so much smoother. And you then spend a lot less time during your interview, not only thinking about, what is an example of that I'm going to need, but how to correctly structure it. You've already done that, and you can then focus on listening to your interviewer as they ask questions, especially since most of the time, especially if you make it to the loop, they're looking for reasons to hire you most of the time. So any of their follow-up questions are trying to guide you to being able to answer the questions that we need to answer when we come together to give a yes or no answer on hiring you. So really, by taking out the structure and what you're going to talk about, you can then focus on where your interviewer is guiding you. Just less stuff that you have to be thinking about on the fly. But that would be my my advice for anybody, regardless of their level, trying to interview at Amazon.
Love that. Tableau public portfolios.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I didn't think it was a big thing until a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, actually, that's pretty cool.
Well, so I'm actually building out a Silvertone analytics learning module where we're going through 3 different case studies. Because I think that really where the gap in the market is kind of when we had Hunter on, like not only doing the work, I think there's so much content on how to build a KPI card or how to build a bar chart, but like explaining the context and then kind of giving that. It's interesting you say the STAR method, because back when Elizabeth was on the podcast episode, I was like, I don't know if I like the STAR method, but you're kind of turning me around on that a little bit.
Hey, I was about to say it works. And like I said, I've done interviews before where I get off the STAR method and they tend not to go correctly, because then you get a little bit disorganized. You end up kind of, again, instead of listening to your interviewer, you're like, oh crap, where where do I take this? Like, okay, and then you're, trying to think of good examples off the top of your head, and it just, unless you're doing improv, it's not a solid way to go about an interview.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just good for organization, to be honest.
All right. Well, we are back on our questions here. Like a good supply chain analyst, you've been across the globe solving people's problems. The first question was from India. Second question was from Canada. Now we're back at India with Alok Choka, and he actually asked the previous question. He's from Canada. The next person is Sidesh Bengal, and has a similar question to the previous, to Alok's question. And is it important for an applicant to know a lot about the supply chain analytics domain, or just the basic domain knowledge for analytics to get a job in, say, this area?
So I would say, as long as you have a good fundamental basis on data analysis, you will be able to tuck into supply chain pretty well. Really, the hardest part is going to be, would be teaching pretty much a supply chain professional the analytics side. If you're an analyst, we can teach you the supply chain side. And it's the one lovely thing about being heavy on the data analytics side is pretty much I kind of came up as being heavy in the data analytics side, and just kind of then, moseyed on into supply chain and kind of fell in love with it and really dug my heels in deep there. But the nice thing is data is data regardless of how you look at it. And especially if you're able to then take that data and tell a story off of it, or give recommendations, or, being able to guide leadership using that data, it doesn't really matter a ton of what domain you come from. If you're able to show those recommendations, I think you'll be just fine. Having basic knowledge is always great. Having more advanced knowledge is even better. But again, things that I wouldn't exactly say would be complete deal breakers. One of the things, and again, not to be too rah-rah on Amazon here, but, and I might misquote this because I'm not looking at this, but one of the things that I appreciate about Amazon here is what Jeff Bezos said of, makes a good applicant, is a good sign of intelligence, is being able to use experiences and skills from other places, and being able to use that in, different scenarios. Kind of like, a lot like myself, I learned a lot about procurement and just-in-time fulfillment working as a mortician. Because again, if your Amazon package is a day late, people are irritated. If things for a loved one's funeral or, life celebration is a day late, they're a little bit more than upset. So it becomes and then it becomes very customer obsessed. I also learned root cause analysis and program management, coaching, cheerleading, and being able to then almost take those examples and be like, not only have I done this professionally here, this is where the origins of them came, and this is how I've been able to use these skills from that are in an industry that is completely unrelated, and it's been almost a similar pattern through everything that you do. It becomes less and less about the knowledge you have in that specific realm, if it's marketing analytics or supply chain analytics, is that you can repeat those fundamental core skills regardless where you go. And if you're able to prove that, you'll be just fine.
Not only was that a great answer, you actually answered two questions without realizing it from our own social media manager, Al Bellamy. He was going to ask you, how would you manage career change? I'm sorry, no, that's not it. That's no. He wanted to say, what aspects of your athletic or coaching background helped you in your life today? And not only did you answer that, you talked about the benefits of being a mortician and just-in-time delivery. So got to keep your package fresh, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, it's a lot of it. And again, it's one of the things that I would love to come back and talk about, is because, I took a hard shift in career, my career trajectory from kind of, 3 years of being a mortician to then, I coached all-star cheerleading for 2 seasons. I also performed for the Trailblazers for 2 seasons, which is the one small thing I was going to correct on the intro is I never did do the trampoline dunk stuff. My job was I took small people and threw them above my head. But one of the other things that I really like talking about, especially with my athletic career, is stress management and performing under high stress situations where, you have tens of thousands of people staring at you. And especially when I worked on the Blazers, sometimes we were throwing people in the air up on the 300 level, and you're holding another life in your hand. You take 2 steps backwards, either you and or her are not walking out of that place. So it's being able to handle all of that, but then having other people all around you, being able to deal with ambiguity, but being able to, again, like I said previously, take all of those skills that you've learned there and show that not only have I done it, in this industry, but in this industry, but now as an applicant, I feel like I can do this in your industry. And I think that's also where that extra R comes in the star that I was talking to John David about is how is this skill repeatable at this place that I'm moving into this field that I'm moving into?
So, okay, what I was going to say earlier, and now that it's gotten brought back up, the repeatable thing, I would call that systems thinking. I don't know if you guys talk about that much, but that's what, like the podcast is a great example of this. Like we have a system developed where we record Tuesday or Wednesday, then Thursday morning, I shoot an intro video, edit it, upload it, and then we do a live premiere. And we've repeated that this will be the 16th time in a row since the beginning of this semester. And it's interesting because like then we're within that system, we can start to test things. We can test different thumbnails, different topics, different subjects. Like it's fascinating kind of seeing how much once you have that structure, it's actually, there's a lot of creativity that can go in there, which I'm very high in openness. So the idea of a structure and like a pattern and like I don't know, routines seems so boring to me, but I'm starting to see the merits of it.
Yeah, I was about to say I'm the same way. I'm not big into routines, but I find myself in a lot of routines.
So would you say you specialize in automation a little bit, repeatable?
Yeah.
routines?
Yeah, a little bit. It's in the job title, and it's one of it's the product that I manage is, automated inventory management.
Nice. Well, we have just one more question. I'm going to give you a mental break. This is a really good question from Elizabeth Hartman, a Marine Corps veteran, that Al forwarded a question for us. I just wanted to say thanks to Hunter Brown for being the first High Point University student to survive the hot seats, and a very special thanks to John David Arianson for surviving his first academic year teaching for us in the hot seat at High Point University. And thanks for carrying the torch of bringing Tableau forward. Without you, we wouldn't have been able to offer this course this spring. And Hunter, try out that tree map or maybe a stacked bar chart instead of that pie chart, man. Pie charts are the devil, man. So other than that, I hope you enjoyed that mental break for my shameless gratitude there. So Elizabeth Hartman wants to know what the largest supply chain issues Amazon's facing in a post-COVID era and how you're adapting to fix them.
So yeah, I was about to say really the biggest issue that we ran into, and I was about to say it's not going to be anything that I'm going to disclose that nobody knows, is one of the hardest things were just reestablishing supply chain links, especially to China in the early parts of the pandemic when they were shut down, and being able to still supply everybody with everything that they need. I think the one thing that we have started to focus on a lot more is how we become more efficient with our deliveries, and then it almost circles back into some of the age-old questions that we have that I was working on while I was on toys, almost 5 years ago. Actually, it'll be in 10 days, I'll be at my 5-year anniversary here. But, 5 years ago, and it's still things that we're working on today, are the two biggest problems with delivery are any inventory that's, heavy and kind of bulky, because again, it costs a lot to ship. So how do we effectively put that, within the network? How do we effectively ship that? How do we still give that customer, you know, that customer promise, even if packages are a bit bigger, a bit more cumbersome, but then almost flips on the other side as well, are kind of your lower price items. So things that are like $3 or $4, where it's like, it costs just that much to ship it. That's some of the stuff on the domestic side. On the international side, where I tend to be a little bit more familiar with, that tends to be more on the establishing good vendor relationships, establishing those good supply chain pipelines into your fulfillment centers, getting appropriate fulfillment center balance to, lower your shipping costs, especially in places like Australia. When I was in Australia, that was one of the big issues we were working on, is where I think it's 90 or 95% of all people live within like 100 miles of the coast. And so just nobody lives in the center. Is how do you effectively and efficiently ship things from, Sydney to Perth, or, all around, without, losing a ton of money? How do we solve some of these, long haul problems in creative and long-term free cash flow maximizing ways? And then, yeah, if you start getting to even earlier stuff, is how do you start, ordering and forecasting for marketplaces that aren't even existing yet? So the nice thing, and kind of to almost put in a nutshell, is depending on where you're at in the world and what marketplace you're focusing on, almost everything there, you can almost find an issue all the way down the pipeline, from our most mature markets to our most, brand new markets. And especially if you're gonna, come into Amazon, it's one of those like, what would you like to tackle? There's always problems that are, here to tackle. And even if they're not within your exact scope, sometimes you're looking at it, and it's, very welcome that if you have a good idea on how to solve a problem, everybody is all ears. And it's a nice thing is that all leadership doors are always open. So if I want to go discuss something with the VP of supply chain for North America, there's a good chance I could get on his calendar to come pitch an idea if I really wanted to. So yeah, there are a lot of areas of opportunity, but again, it's what kind of keeps us all showing up every day, is that there are tons of this opportunity, and it's always shifting. And I'm sure if you ask me that exact same question in 60 days from now or 6 months from now, I might have a completely different answer for you. It's just, how the market goes, and it's what makes it fun to be in a fast-paced industry like online retail.
Sounds like a very exciting place to work.
Yeah, no, it's you're never short of things to do or problems to solve.
Awesome. So Dr. Hall, that was the last question, right?
That's it.
Awesome. Well, I don't want to cut too much into your workout time, Danny. I know it's 3:30 our time, so I know that's what was that going on?
It's noon 30 here.
Oh,
Yeah.
noon 30. All right.
Noon 30.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was amazing. I feel like you were literally the perfect person to help. Like, tomorrow is the finals for this special projects class for High Point University, and I'm going to be critiquing the students' Tableau public portfolios. So I mean, you just did my job.
This is about the best review I could have gotten. Just saying. So.
Well, I guess my review doesn't matter too much. Thanks, Hunter.
You know it.
Awesome. So, Danny, where can people find you?
So, I was about to say, you can easily find me on LinkedIn if you want to chat, especially if you have anybody coming up through your program, if they just want, know more questions about, how you can successfully navigate career change, kind of what my day-to-day life is, or even like just down to what it's like to work at Amazon. You can reach out to me at LinkedIn. Name's Daniel Lauer on there. I generally go by Danny. So if you call me Danny, I'll know you'll probably have seen me here. And I'll probably be a lot more apt to say hello. But I'm generally pretty open and willing to answer questions and just kind of chat. And yeah, if you want to network, I'm totally game for that as well. But yeah, that was about to say it's the easiest place to find me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time.